When we look back on the rise of Gaius Octavius, later known better as Caesar Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, we can see that it was marked by just the right mixture of skill and fortune. His early life was very much shaped by his great uncle, Julius Caesar. As a young man, just after a serious illness, Octavian went to join Caesar in Hispania. He was, however, shipwrecked and left to find him through the enemy territory. It was during this time of Octavian's stay with the great general that the relationship deepened and Caesar became increasingly impressed with his nephew. When Caesar was assassinated years later, the legions at once offered to follow Augustus to Rome and help him avenge the great dictator's death. With a happy mixture of caution and courage, that was probably half the secret of his good luck, he declined the offer, but resolved to visit the capital in a private capacity. Landing in Italy, he heard that Caesar, by his will, had adopted him as his son and made him his heir. The troops at the port saluted him accordingly by the name of Caesar. The young statesman conducted himself with unfailing tact and was rewarded by almost unvarying success. One after another, his rivals made fatal mistakes of which he promptly availed himself. All this time, Octavian went on steadily improving his position and he let nothing stand in his way. In 29 BC, Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus, who seems to have had a knack for collecting names and titles as well, celebrated a triple triumph at Rome, for victory over Illyrians and over Mark Antony and Cleopatra. After his victory in Egypt, he went to honor the body of Alexander the Great. Ancient historian Cassius Dio even mentions that a piece of Alexander's nose broke off at Octavian's touch. That, however, wouldn't change the fact that Octavian was now the ultimate master of Rome. The people, tired of incessant bloodshed that had exhausted at least 3 generations, hailed the savior of society as nothing less than a god. He had closed the temple of Janus, a token that undisturbed peace reigned throughout the Roman world. He was bestowed the title of Imperator, given to victorious generals on the field of battle by their own troops. He held it, by decree of the Senate, in perpetuity and was thus the permanent commander-in-chief of the Roman army, the backbone of his power. 2 years later, they bestowed him titles of Princeps and Augustus, marking the start of the Roman Empire. While resolved to be the absolute master of the empire, he was also careful to play the part of merely the first citizen. He would not permit the senators to rise from their seats either when he entered the chamber or when he quitted it. He was accustomed to walk or to be carried in an open chair throughout the streets. His salutations were as free and unceremonious as the handshakings of an American president. Petitions from suitors he received with the greatest courtesy. To an applicant who was obviously shy, he said, "Why do you give me your paper as if you were giving a coin to an elephant?" The title of king, so hated by the Romans, he sternly refused even a mention of. He was above all things anxious not to break, or at least not seem to break, the Roman law, through which he legitimized his rule. And it is this seeming, this strict care of his visage and impression he left on Romans that was so important to him. He allowed no statue, painting or coin to depict him aging beyond his 20s, even when he was an old man in his 70s and had bad teeth, eyebrows that met, numerous moles, a hooked nose, unkempt hair and beard. He always was a master of propaganda and a shrewd politician. At the annual elections of magistrates, still kept up with a certain show of freedom, he canvassed in the usual way for the candidates whom he had nominated and tendered his own vote when the tribe to which he belonged was called. When he nominated his own grandsons for office, he was careful to add, "if they shall be found to deserve it." For years, a humble dwelling that could not compare with the splendid villas of the great nobles and capitalists of Rome, though still a spacious residence near the Forum, sufficed for him. At a later period, he found that something more like an imperial palace had become a necessity. Accordingly, he bought some of the adjoining mansions and built a handsome residence, declaring, however, at the same time, that he considered it to be the property of the Roman people. Supposedly, no masterpieces of sculpture or paint were to be seen in his Roman palaces or his country residences, though some frescoes can still be seen today. If he had any expensive taste, it was for gardens and plant life, and he amused himself by making collections of what we would now call fossils and prehistoric remains, but which in his time were described as the huge limbs of monstrous creatures, bones of the giants, and arms of heroes. He seldom used any article of dress that had not been woven by the women of his own family. The wealth that he would not spend upon himself he lavished upon the city. "I found it of brick and left it of marble," was his well-known boast, and, as a whole, it was little more than the truth. At the same time, he did his best to protect it from the dangers of fire and flood. Against the first, he instituted a regular corps of watchmen. The second he at least diminished by enlarging the bed and cleansing the channel of the Tiber. Cheap bread and plenty of amusement were, as has been often said, the two great wants of Rome. Augustus was careful to provide for the second as for the first. Never before had the public shows been so numerous, so varied, or so splendid. While he thus indulged his subjects, he tried to bring them back to what he held to be the better and simpler habits of former times. He was earnest to reform the public morals, but probably found the task beyond his powers. He passed laws of great severity, but had to relax them or to allow them to fall into disuse. Temples were built and ceremonies of worship regularly performed. Another matter of which the emperor's heart was set was to bring back the use of the old Roman dress, the toga. He issued an edict that no man should be allowed into the forum or the circus unless wearing a toga. Though he had won power by crime and cruelty, he strove to use it for the well-being of Rome. He was singularly patient of adverse comments once he had seated himself firmly on the throne. Nor did he resent the admiration which some still felt for the great man of a regime which he had finally destroyed. We are told that he found one of his grandsons reading a book which the lad sought to hide in his robe. He took the volume and found it to be one of the treatises of Cicero, an opponent of his adoptive father, Julius Caesar. He returned it to the lad with the words, "He was a good man and a lover of his country." Still, there was a limit to his good nature. When on one occasion loud complaints were made in his presence of the high price of wine, he pointed to the great aqueduct which Agrippa had constructed, and reminded the dissatisfied that no one had need to be thirsty in Rome. He died a natural death, a very rare occurrence and an achievement in itself for such a rank. His life was marked by extreme efficiency. He could be merciful to enemies when mercy suited his policy. He was relentless when it seemed expedient to be severe. Though he had won power by violence and crime, of this he cannot be wholly acquitted, he certainly tried to use it well, or at least appear like it. Sometimes luck is more important than skill, but in case of Augustus, he possessed both. This jackpot of a combination would be sorely missed in the successors of his dynasty who, unlike Augustus, would meet a premature end. Tiberius suffocated on his deathbed, Caligula assassinated, Claudius poisoned by his wife, Nero ended his life to escape an execution. It would take a civil war for the empire to become stable again. This would lead to 4 pretenders fighting for the throne, marking the year 69 AD to be named the Year of 4 Emperors. Of these, the last one left standing would become Emperor Vespasian. Octavian's rise to power was marked by both internal politics and military expansions, sometimes both at the same time. If you want to learn how he marched into Illyricum in preparation for the unavoidable confrontation with Mark Antony and Cleopatra, click the next video. Be sure to like, subscribe, you know how YouTube works, and I'll bring you more history soon.